The horrors of Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War were and remain shocking and almost beyond comprehension. Now, new research has uncovered yet another travesty visited upon prisoners in those camps. To aid the Nazi war effort, prisoners were used in torturous tests of hard drugs such as cocaine, crystal meth, and mescaline. German writer Norman Ohler uncovered the records that tell that story, and he details it all in his book, Blitzed, Drugs in Nazi Germany, and he joins us now for more. Norman, nice to see you again. Thank you for coming here. I want to start by talking about a place called Sachsenhausen, a concentration camp near Berlin. They ran something there called the Shoe Walking Unit. What was that?
It was a group of prisoners who had to test shoelaces for the German shoe industry. So these you were sentenced within the concentration camp to join that shoe walking unit. It was a penalty unit, and they gave you different shoes to test, and then you had to walk a track, a circular track through the camp for days, basically. And
let's bring this picture up, Sheldon, because this track that was used 70 years ago still exists. That's it. Tell us about this track.
Well, this track now is part of the memorial that the concentration camp now is, and we can see here that this track consisted of it had different layers. Some was tarmac, then there was stone, and then there was sand. So it was supposed to simulate the different grounds that potentially a German soldier would have to walk over on his conquests throughout Europe.
And the prisoners tested the consistency of the shoe on this track.
Yeah, especially the shoe soles, because leather became scarce. So the shoe companies were ordered to produce new materials for shoe soles, and so they were tested on these inmates, and only if the companies could say that their new invention was certified by Sachsenhausen, they could mass produce them.
In 1944, the German Navy turned that unit into something called the Pill Patrol. What was the Pill Patrol?
Well, in March 1944, the Navy realized that their conventional U-boat war is lost. Their big ships had been sunk, and they developed new vessels, mini-submarines. And these mini-submarines are part of what are wonder weapons. Or there was always the rumor that Hitler is producing new wonder weapons that will turn the war around. And these mini-submarines were supposed to be a wonder weapon, and they were supposed to go all the way up to the Thames River undetected because they're so small, and torpedo the big British and American ships. And the people manning those mini-submarines, there were only 1 or 2 men on each mini-submarine, and they had to stay awake for up to 5 days and 5 nights. They couldn't sleep in those things, otherwise they would die. It wasn't possible. So the Navy thought that they would have to be drugged. They would have to receive a stimulant that's so powerful that keeps them awake for nearly a week. And so they came up with 10 different drugs. They call it D1 to D10, drug 1 to drug 10, and they were drug combinations of methamphetamine, cocaine, and opioids. And in order to find out what is the best drug, or let's say the most efficient drug, most effective drug, they were basically, the Navy was hiring the shoe walking unit, which was organized by the SS. They were paying the SS money so they could use the shoe walking unit in order to give these inmates different drug combinations and then let them walk their shoes on drugs, and then write reports on which drug combination keeps an inmate awake the longest.
And what's the longest amount of time somebody would have been forced to walk around that track?
Well, they started at 8 p.m. with the very heavy backpacks full of stones, and one guy was still working at 4 p.m. the next day when they actually stopped him, but he just continued walking. So that's
20 straight hours.
We have to understand that these people were not well fed at all. I mean, they were weak. They had no power whatsoever. They had been in concentration camps in this concentration camp for years. So it shows you how strong that artificial stimulant actually was.
And if you couldn't keep going, what happened to you?
Well, the shoe walking unit / pill patrol was a penalty unit that everyone was afraid of, because the guy who ran it, actually a shoemaker who was not even a party member, but who got this new job as running the shoe walking unit. He was a sadist, and he let his dog on guys who couldn't walk anymore, and actually a lot of them got killed, also just shot, beaten. So it was a very heavy unit within the concentration camp.
Let's talk about Dachau. This is a concentration camp in the south of Germany near Munich. The Nazis were experimenting with brainwashing and consciousness control. What were they doing in those circumstances?
Those are quite different experiments. This is not about endurance. This is about getting into the mind of someone. In the concentration camp of Auschwitz, the SS had run into problems while interrogating Polish resistance fighters. They just wouldn't talk. They just wouldn't reveal their secrets. So the SS thought, why don't we drug these people? And these tests were done in the concentration camp of Dachau, close to Munich. The Nazis had this idea: we give someone, without his knowledge, the psychedelic mescaline. In coffee, they did that. Gave the inmates coffee, and then waited for a while. And then, when the psychedelic effect set in, the interrogator would say that I know that you're feeling strange right now because I'm controlling your mind, and I have your mind under my control. And this was very effective, and they made reports and try to find out how much mescaline to give, what questions to ask, and they found out that you can actually extract the innermost secrets from a person by doing so.
So it worked.
It worked quite well, and when the Americans liberated Dachau concentration camp, they took all those findings and expanded on them in their own brainwashing program, MK Ultra.
Let's just follow up on that. So the Americans, after liberating this concentration camp, became aware of the testing that was going on. They found the records, and then they conducted their own tests?
Well, I was trying to find those records in Dachau, and I was told by the archivist there that they're all to be found in America, because the American intelligence took them. And American brainwashing programs started right after World War II, and they even start within Germany. The Americans set up a villa close to Frankfurt where they start working on brainwashing techniques. They had then a little bit later in the Korean War that the Americans fought, they were trying to find out who's a collaborator with the Soviet Union. And this became a theme within post-war United States to disclose who's a spy, and so they used those methods and techniques the Nazis started with and worked with them for a long time.
Do you have a view as to how ethical that was for the Americans to continue that testing?
Well, obviously it's completely unethical, and it kind of shows you, it's in a way the tip of the iceberg of what America learned from Nazi Germany. Or there's more aspects to it. I mean, they took a lot of scientists, German scientists who had been war criminals, and just gave them a free pass so they could work in the United States and develop the nuclear bomb and develop other things. So America was not really acting from a moral standpoint, but from a very practical standpoint of acquiring whatever they needed in order to be the world's superpower and superior to the Soviet Union.
Do you know if they continued to do the testing for many years thereafter and how far they got with it?
I have not done that research yet. I would be very interested in doing so. A lot of intelligence records apparently about that program have been destroyed because they don't want anyone to work on that in the future, but it's certainly an interesting topic to try to find out more.
Do you know whether any of the German soldiers or people in authority who were in charge of these testings, whether any of them, for example, were brought to justice at Nuremberg at those trials or anything like that?
Not really. The guy who did the tests in Dachau, his name was Dr. Kurt Plötner, an SS guy. For him it was surprisingly easy to not be prosecuted at all. And in fact, he became a professor at the University of Freiburg after the war. And this certainly could not have happened if the Americans wouldn't have given their green light for that.
Are you as disgusted by all of this as I suspect most people are?
Yeah, I'm disgusted, to be honest. And I mean, this was some of the darkest research I have been doing for Blitzed. And when I talked with Hans Mommsen, the prominent historian on National Socialism, who helped me design the book about this, he said this is a very important topic that has not really been researched and that historians have not really examined so far.
Do you think there's any value at all in any of the testing that was done?
No. I think it's horrible. For example, this shoe-walking unit, they pretended that they're doing scientific testing for shoe soles, but you don't need a penalty unit within the concentration camp to do that. And they were giving the inmates, often they were giving them shoes that didn't fit at all just to hurt them. So they were kind of living their sadistic practices in the name of science. And I think this is what happened with a lot of Nazi experiments. I think it's highly questionable whether those experiments were any good. I mean, I don't think they're any good at all. I think they're horrible and that people who did them should have been punished.
Blitzed, Drugs in Nazi Germany. Norman Ohler, thank you so much for coming into TVO tonight.
Sehr gern. Dankeschön.
Bitteschön.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.